So, next week we are talking to Susie Dent.
Hello and welcome to Lexitecture, a podcast about word origins and histories. My name is Ryan, and in each episode my friend Amy and I bring a new pair of words to share their stories with each other and you. You can find our past episodes and the occasional blog post on our website at lexitecture.com. Follow along with us on Twitter and Facebook at Lexitecture, and if you really like what we do, you can support the show at patreon.com/lexitecture. Today's episode, Ham Bastard. So we should jump in, but before that, I want to, while we're on the section that I'm probably going to keep most of, issue an apology for listeners for last episode and for apparently some sort of ongoing level issues. I am not, nor have I ever been, an audio technician, sound engineer, or anything related to that. So apologies if Amy's voice was ducked inordinately last time. We had a listener on Twitter message us and said very nice things about the episode and all the rest, but did point out that she had to pause the episode in order to hear Amy's wisdom over the sound of a fairly soft, slightly noise-producing fan in her room. So, yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, that's not ideal, is it?
No. So,
do you know what? No one has ever before asked me to be louder.
That's how I know it's my fault.
Like pretty much never in the universe.
So
I'm the sort of human being that occasionally my husband will say to me in public places, "You're shouting," and these days I no longer see that as a criticism. I genuinely go, "I am sorry. I'll stop that."
Right? Yeah, just an actual
because I just
reflection.
don't notice. Yeah.
Yeah. So this week will hopefully be better. I'm gonna spend some time watching YouTube videos on how to make podcasts sound like sound instead of just murmurings and murmurations. But yeah, so apologies for that, but we're going to get going and we will adopt, adapt, and improve. And thank you for feedback and for still listening, even though it's hard.
Definitely. We're both very much human beings who like to know if we're doing things that are not as good as they could be, and to apologise for those things and to try and improve them to the best of our abilities. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for still being there, and definitely feedback is always a good thing. I mean, unless you're a dick.
Or if it's like audio
dick,
feedback, in which case I'll try to
feedback.
get rid of that too.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Puns are awesome.
Oh, puns.
Who's
Ryan has 3 children. You get
do.
that ability when you have children, I presume.
I
When you're a
think it just,
man, the dad jokes firmware update just gets installed, and that's how it goes.
It does. I've always had it, but it did get the expansion pack, as it were. So that's good. Is it you or me first this time? It doesn't much matter,
I don't know.
I think
I'll go first.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Was that you about to say? I think it's me, and I'm like,
so
it's me. It's definitely me. We really are. Such planning.
A well-oiled machine.
I mean, sometimes, dear listener, really, it's tiresome to have to deal with Ryan because, you know, we're both so plan orientated and it can just, sometimes it gets a bit much.
That's
What
right.
with the spreadsheets and the scheduling software and the endless meetings and all that.
Meticulous attention to detail.
Yeah. Oh dear. Okay, so I went to Spain last week,
Yay.
which is great. Yeah, I took a holiday with my husband. We went to Girona, which is in Catalonia. Yeah,
Still part of Spain.
I don't know if other people do this, but I have been to, again with my husband, we went on holiday to Verona in Italy, the setting of
Fair
Romeo and
Verona.
Juliet.
Yeah.
Very, very lovely city. If you're ever nearby, check it out. It's very gorgeous. But the whole time that we were in Verona, we spent a great deal of time both within our heads and outside our heads going do 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 my Verona, because that's the kind of human beings that we are. And then we went to, so I say Girona because I'm trying to get my Catalonian pronunciation on, which is probably not a good idea. But it's spelled Girona. So once again, the knack got themselves into our head and into our holiday. Catalonian is fun. So I messaged Ryan about 2 days into the trip. I was sitting at a restaurant, a little cafe where we'd gone to get some food. And because we're tourists and it's a bit of a tourist town, the menu was in 3 or 4 different languages. And one of the things that I noticed was that Catalan uses the letter X to represent the sound ch. And
That's
so
awesome.
chips was spelled Xips. And I just found this unbelievably wonderful and charming and fantastic. Probably the best manifestation of that was the day that I sent you the message about ketchup.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Ketchup has not only an X but a QUE in Catalan. And yeah, it made me so happy.
It's the best Scrabble word ever.
Yeah, definitely. Scrabble featured quite heavily on our holiday because that's the kind of holidays we like to take, rock and roll.
Yeah, that's right.
But also, travel Scrabble is the best thing ever. So if you don't like me for playing Scrabble, then move along. There's nothing for you to listen to here.
Yeah, that's basically the moral of this story.
But one of the things that I saw on the menu really interested me because when you're in Europe and you're in a touristy sort of place, you can generally expect representation of English, Spanish, German, French. Added into that, we also had Catalan. So I think there were 5 languages on the menu. And I was looking at a word thinking, now that's got an interesting etymological story behind it, surely. And the word is, in English, ham. Ham.
Ooh. Okay.
The very delicious. Apologies to any non-meat eaters, but I do love ham.
It just is delicious.
It really is. I mean, one of the I think that one of the sort of vilifications for my love of ham is that fake ham exists. You know, if I was a vegetarian and I wanted to eat a fake approximation of something that I used to eat, but my principles no longer allowed me to eat, that thing would have to be fairly delicious for me to go to the bother of trying to approximate it, I figure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, because meat-free bacon and meat-free ham exist, it's obviously a pretty universally brilliant thing. And ham in itself is quite an interesting food word. When you see it on a menu, particularly in Europe, you're not always quite sure what you're going to get when you order ham. I don't know if you've experienced this. So, I mean, to take its sort of brother, if you will, bacon, your understanding of what bacon is and my understanding of what bacon is are different.
Okay.
And it was probably when we were in Korea that I first discovered this because, you know, when we both lived in Korea, I've no idea what the situation is like these days. Probably much better, but it was, sort of 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And the town that we lived in didn't have a whole lot of kind of variety of Western food, which was great because I didn't go to Korea to eat bacon, frankly. But, bacon's good and I missed it sometimes. Yeah. And then within the kind of group of friends that we had of people from various other countries, there was this sort of little, almost like current of underground black marketry going on. It was in no way a black market. It consisted of people going, hey, have you heard that Home Plus has got cheese? And everyone would get super excited and Home Plus would be mobbed with confused foreigners trying to find the cheese.
Trying to find cheese,
which was just, it was like a block of cheddar cheese and it cost 5 times as much as anything else in that whole supermarket. And we all bought it because we missed home.
Yeah, so worth it.
So at some point within that process, someone was like, hey, Carrefour has bacon. And everyone was like, woo, sweet. Bacon! Which is kind of crazy if you think about it, because there were so many delicious pork varieties to try in Korea.
Oh, yeah.
We probably didn't need bacon.
Carnivore's paradise.
But, yeah, people do get crazy about bacon. So Ross and I went to wherever it was that had the bacon, and we found it via the directions from whoever had given us this good skinny about the bacon. And we were like, what is that? What is this stuff? Why is it rectangular? And why does it have stripes? What's going on? And what we were looking at is what you would generally refer to, and I speak as what North America would generally refer to as bacon.
Yeah.
It is rectangular and it is stripy, and when you grill it correctly, it kind of waves. It gets sort of ripply at the edges.
Yeah.
That's not bacon here.
Is it rashers? Is that?
Rashers isn't a term that I would associate with Irish speakers.
Okay.
Who will talk about rashers to mean bacon in any way, shape or form.
Okay.
But North American bacon, you only really see it here on like a Burger King burger, a McDonald's burger, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But interestingly, so of course, because of the sort of human being I am, I immediately went off to find what was going on with the bacon. And I discovered that, in fact, Canadian bacon is more like what we would call in the UK bacon. So technically speaking, what I mean here, what I'm referring to is back bacon. And back bacon consists of a kind of an oval type shape of meat with a little sort of rectangular tail that is more a mixture of meat and fat.
Right. Yeah.
You sound so confused. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
The rectangular tail thing threw me, but Canadian bacon or back bacon or those things are, as variants. But they are still variants. Even in here, it's like when you go to Brazil, you can't just order nuts and get Brazil nuts. Or the one time I was in France and just ordered toast and was really disappointed that it didn't have any eggs on it. It doesn't work like you will show up in Canada and you order bacon and get Canadian bacon. But Canadian bacon is the stuff. I now this is all flooding back to me because I now remember having this conversation in Korea.
Oh
with
yeah,
you
I was
very
crazy
upset
about
at
the
being
bacon.
Horrifically misled about this presence of this nonsense food.
Yeah, I was not happy. Don't mess with my bacon expectations. Anyway, so ham. In Europe, sometimes you get... In Europe, you don't see bacon like that. All that. You certainly don't see the rectangular American kind. And the kind of cured back bacon that would be part of a quote-unquote traditional English breakfast, Scottish breakfast, whatever you want to call it, isn't all that common either. You get, of course, the wonderful world of cured pork products that exists in continental Europe.
Yeah.
You get things like Italian prosciutto and German ham, baked ham. There's so many different deliciously hammy products out there. And sometimes it's hard to know what you're going to get when you order ham. So, what I saw on the menu in front of me that led me to this word that I found so very interesting about it was the following list of translations.
Okay.
So, Al desperately tries to find the note that she's looking for and cannot find it. Here it is. So, in Spanish, ham is jamón, Jamon. Apologies for my pronunciation in advance. In Catalan, it is pernil, Pernil.
Okay.
English, ham. Italian, prosciutto. French, jambon.
Jambon, yeah.
And German, Schinken. And I'm looking at all these words thinking, what now?
Yeah.
Now, I'm aware from having been to Germany that Schinken is sort of what I would refer to as bog standard boiled ham, the kind of ham that you would buy at a deli counter, and it's sort of pinkish and round, and and prosciutto would tend to refer to Parma ham or something a little bit fancier and thinner and cured.
Yeah.
Jambon, French, could refer to either of those things. In English, ham tends to be the German Schinken, that sort of standard pink-looking stuff. And again, in Spanish, because they have the amazing Iberian cured ham, there are shops in Catalonia consisting purely of legs of cured pork.
Oh.
They're just hanging up everywhere. Yeah.
Okay, I gotta go.
Amazing.
If anyone needs me, I'll be in Catalonia.
So I find myself thinking this is really interesting.
Right.
That all of these words they look so different, and the two that are kind of closest, there's jamón and jambon, which are pretty similar. I'm like, okay, so those guys have clearly come from a common source. What about the others? So I did me a little bit of digging, and the first thing that I discovered about the word ham is that it is in fact one of these wonderful fills a gap in my knowledge words, because the literal meaning of ham, and in fact the first sense given in the Oxford English Dictionary for the word ham is a thing that I didn't know had a name, and now I do.
Okay.
And it is the part of the leg at the back of the knee, the hollow or bend of the knee.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
now,
a ham?
In my family, we fondly refer to it as the knee armpit, because my niece, who's now, an adult, referred to it as such when she was a very little girl in the bath.
That's perfect.
Yeah, I need to wash my knee armpit. But in fact, your knee armpit is your ham.
That's really
And
interesting.
yeah, I was really curious to find this out. And the first citation given in the OED is much, much, much earlier than the sense of the delicious salty pork product that we all enjoy, unless we choose not to enjoy it. So the first citation is from around about circa 1000. So
Wow,
in
nice.
Anglo-Saxon, people knew that space behind your kneecap was called the ham. And there's a very lovely point mentioned in the Etum Online entry for ham. It says that with hammen I falden, with folded hams, this is a Middle English way of saying kneeling.
Oh, man. It is now
Isn't
a
that
21st
great?
century way of saying kneeling.
Yeah, folded hams.
Fold them hams.
So, yeah, fold them hams down on your knees. And yeah, I found that really, really cool, really, really interesting. So OED has it from around about 1000. Now, clearly, while I'm saying this is the name for this part of the body, it isn't one that we use terribly often. The
Right.
last written citation given in the OED is 1832. He broke it to pieces by the tendons of his hams.
Okay.
And we don't have anything after that. So it doesn't, however, mark it, as the OED often does, as an obsolete usage of the word. So either people just aren't really writing about this part of the body anymore, or, you know, we've moved on and knee armpit has replaced it in some way, you know, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Interestingly, this is it's related to the fact that the muscles at the back of our thighs are called hamstrings.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
that
that's what I was going to ask.
that name, it's believed that name comes from the tendency of butchers to hang pork and various other types of meat up by the tendons at the back of the knee,
Right, okay.
which are pretty, you know, they're pretty solid and sturdy. So you can hang up a leg of pork via these tendons, the ham strings. So
Gotcha.
yeah, so ham also meaning the back of the thigh or the thigh and the buttock, given in the OED. Referred to the hoch, which is a word that I never know if I'm pronouncing correctly. That's how we pronounce it in Scotland, Hough, which leads us to words like hawk, as in ham hock, things like that.
Right.
And then we get the sense of the thigh of a slaughtered animal used for food, specifically that of a hog, salted and dried in smoke or otherwise, also the meat so prepared. So the first written citation for this sense of the word is from 1650. Mr. Henry Blythe had such antipathy against an ham that no sooner did he hear a ham spoken of, but he swerved. So,
Wow.
yeah, Mr. Henry Blythe really doesn't like the ham.
Jeez.
We then get the second sense of the word, someone who is inexpert or amateur, a ham actor or a ham actress, you know, someone who
Right,
is
okay.
overacting or they're not good
Yeah.
at what they're doing. And that sense of ham acting continues to be sort of, used sometimes looking at these written citations, sometimes in not very complimentary reviews of performances, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah.
We then get an amateur telegraphist, now
Yeah.
especially an amateur radio operator.
Yeah, that's the
in
first thing about
sense of
ham radio.
Ham
Yeah.
radio. Yeah, sure. And then someone who is incompetent. This leads us to phrases like ham-fisted, but it seems that it would also have been used by itself. So we have in 1888 from the Missouri Republican, I'm not sure when. Why do they hyphenate things? Sorry, why do they abbreviate things that I cannot then guess the end of?
Yeah, that's...
Maybe I just need to get better at the abbreviations.
Hmm.
But we have it, he is a good fighter, but will allow the veriest ham to whip him.
Oh, okay.
They want me to slug with this big ham. So someone who isn't good at what they're doing.
Right.
An inexpert person. And that then leads us to someone who's clumsy or ineffective or incompetent. Yeah, so there's quite a range of sort of interesting phrases that come either from this particular sense, the sense of being incompetent or ineffective or sort of over the top. But we also have, there's a rhyming slang, ham and beef, rhyming slang for chief and referring specifically to the chief warder in a prison.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, you know how I feel about rhyming slang, so I'm not going to go too far into that particular rabbit hole.
Rhyming slang it baffles and fascinates and completely befuddles me every single time. Like I don't know. I have a mental block against it. It's weird.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan because it always just feels to me very contrived. And it's not really fair of me to say that because people use it. There are areas of this country, certainly. And I presume it exists in other languages. To be honest, I haven't done an awful lot of research or reading into rhyming slang because it pisses me off.
Right.
That's the real reason. There's nothing scholarly or I can't really cover myself in glory here. I can just say it kind of annoys me, so I pretend it's not there.
Yeah.
As I do with quite a lot of things.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to this interesting list of entries on the menu.
Mm-hmm.
So I found a wonderful website called Jamonify. That's JAMONIFY.com, which loves ham just as much as Mr. Henry Blythe seemed to dislike it.
Nice.
And there is an article here about the origins of the Spanish word jamón. And what I found particularly interesting here is jamón, referring to the meat, comes from the word jambe, meaning leg.
Leg. Yeah, okay.
So despite the fact that the words look dramatically different, ham, the back of the leg, and jambe, the leg, then gave us these respective words meaning the meat from that part of whichever animal you're talking about. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Ham, which I haven't mentioned at all, the actual etymology of it, we have Old English ham with one or two M's, Old High German hammer, Middle High German hame. So very much a Germanic. We see it in Dutch, Flemish, Old Norse. And the word has stayed pretty stable in terms of its form and its spelling and its usage.
Right.
We also have ham to be crooked, as in to bend the knee, just like in folded hams.
Right.
And I found it very, very interesting that while jambe or gamba, which is the sort of vulgar Latin camba, which then becomes gamba and then jambe and then jamón, even though it's dramatically different to ham, it's done the same dance moves to get to where it is.
Right.
It's just started in a different place. So we have the very Germanic ham, we have the very, very Latinate jamón and jambon in French, and then we have schinken. So I'm thinking, we've got a really Germanic word for this particular thing. Why doesn't Germany?
Yeah,
Seems to me like a reasonable place to go to. So Wiktionary has this to say about the etymology of the word schinken. From Middle High German schinke, from Old High German skinko or schinko, from Proto-Germanic skinko or skenko, which means shank or thigh.
Right,
so
okay.
Once again, we have this very clear relationship. This word means leg, and thus this word also refers to the meat from that part of the body of the animal that we're eating, but still this very, very divergent range of ways to express that thing.
Yeah.
So some of we start to get a little bit of crossover here. So schinken, for example, leads us to Middle English had schench, or skench, meaning thigh or leg.
Okay.
Dialectical English skink, which leads us to words like shank or shin, which are all used to describe meat and cuts of meat.
Yeah.
But yeah, I couldn't really find any particular reason why ham from the back of the leg versus ham from the shank or the thigh, all having this clear sense of it's the leg first, then it's the meat.
Yeah.
Have this very, very kind of different thing going on. The Jamonify website also mentions that pernil, which was the Catalan word for ham,
Right.
also comes from this sense of leg. It comes in a slightly different way to go. So, excuse me, I've lost what I'm looking for. We had gamba, jamba, jomb, jamon. Oh, yeah, so pernil, the Catalan word, comes from Latin perna, which means leg.
Like,
So once again, the word for leg becomes the word for the meat. But all these different words for leg in all these different seemingly related languages they've gone their own merry way.
yeah.
And whether you're eating schinken or pernil or jamon, you're still referring to the leg. You're just doing it in lots of different ways. So I was then a little bit curious about bacon, because ham and bacon are sometimes, the terms are sometimes used interchangeably, particularly in this part of the world. And found that the etymology of bacon is in fact very simple and obvious. I love how etymologies can seem simple and obvious once you've figured them out, once you've looked them up, but you would never ever get there by yourself. Bacon, meaning the meat from the back and sides of a hog, comes from Proto-Germanic bakon, which means back meat.
All right, well.
Yeah, exactly. So bacon comes from the back and ham comes from the leg. The slight fly in the hammy ointment that we have from my menu listing is the word prosciutto, the Italian spiced ham that's so famous, and it's protected as a product. Parma ham comes from Parma, and if you say that your ham is from Parma and it's not, then you're in trouble with the European Union and all sorts of other sort of laws and what's the word I'm after? Permits and trademarks, all that kind of thing. This one has nothing to do with legs.
Okay.
Etymonline has this to say about prosciutto. Italian spiced ham, 1911, from Italian alteration, probably by influence of prosciugato, which means dried, of prosciutto from pre, here an intensive prefix, plus sciutto from Latin exsuctus, lacking juice or dried up. Past participle of exsugere, draw out, suck out or draw out moisture. From ex out plus sugere, to suck.
Okay.
So while ham is our leg, and schinken is our leg, and pernil is our leg, and jamon is our leg, or the leg of whichever poor animal is dinner that night, prosciutto has nothing to do with any of those things. I don't know if this means that the ham can come from any part of the body. I presume that it's still ham. It's still that cut of meat that we find so delicious. But rather than it being about the leg, in this case it's about sucking all the juice out to leave you with the very, very delicious dried product.
Just the drying process itself.
Yeah.
I wonder if that means that prosciutto isn't actually limited to any specific sort of meat, or wasn't at first. You know what I mean? Like if prosciutto is just a byword for dried meat.
Sucked dry stuff. Sucked dry stuff isn't, I wouldn't have made it as an advertiser, would I?
I also wouldn't Google search that on a public computer. just
yeah,
pro tip.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
I used to say that a lot when I was a teacher, and obviously you're working within a network that is provided by the council, and it has safe searches and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And we would often have conversations and people would say, yeah, don't look that up at school.
Yeah. Wait till you get someplace else. That's really interesting.
The OED has the first citation of prosciutto ham, or Italian ham, as 1841, talking about mountain hams prepared in the villages of the Apennines. Oh,
okay.
Sorry, I stand corrected. The earliest is from around 1777. But here the quotation refers to, having called our San Marino host, we paid him for his wine and his sausage, prosciutti, and were pleased to find that he was uncommonly thankful for a very moderate gratification. So the writer here refers to sausage as prosciutto.
Right, okay.
Excuse me.
So maybe it was just sort of a byword for that. Or just processed.
Yeah, dried out meat stuff.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's weird that ham comes from a German word for leg that is no longer the German word for leg.
Yeah.
And that we use a word for leg that replaced the word for leg that we got from the German word for leg, which is now the German word for ham. Because shanks used to be someone's legs, Edward
that's right.
Longshanks is the one that comes to mind. But we no longer use shank because it was replaced by the word leg, which is not used for any sort of meat products. But it's weird that our Germanic origin word for ham is no longer used, has been supplanted by a different word for leg in Germany for the type of meat, and then that one was replaced by our word for leg, which I think is Swedish.
Oh, my brain is hurting.
Yeah.
Leg, incidentally, is a Scandinavian word. Early Scandinavian, Old Icelandic. And refers, in the OED, it talks about, the lower limbs of the human body first, and then each of the organs of support and locomotion in an animal body. But rather than talking about the meat, it seems to be talking about the way that an animal moves, for example, talking about that
structural
part
and
of the
locomotive
animal
thing.
that is letting it
Right.
walk. Yeah.
Fascinating. Interesting.
Yeah.
And also delicious. And now I'm super
There's a
hungry.
whole lot of eating on that ham.
Yeah. Wow, that's fantastic. Awesome. Ham is delicious. I love ham.
Ham is good.
Well, my word is the one that's going to get this episode marked explicit, because I have looked up the word bastard.
Awesome. Great word. I am already excited about learning more about this word.
And so...
Bastard ham.
Yeah, bastard ham.
Or indeed ham bastard.
Or ham bastard. Yeah, I'm not sure which way I'm going to go. It'll be one of the two.
Both are awesome.
So the word bastard, I mean, this is... I would love to do a sort of a meta-analysis on the popularity of this word in the wake of Game of Thrones. Because I feel like...
Interesting, yes.
That would have been a real resurrection in people's understanding of the original meaning of bastard, meaning, of course, like an illegitimate child, born out of wedlock, either as a result of an affair or born even just pre-wedlock, a couple that were married later, but that it would still be the bastard son or bastard daughter. It's interesting that this bastard is usually male, it seems. But maybe that's just... There's something there, but I'm not sure what that is.
I would presume that when you're looking at issues of lineage, daughters aren't really that important anyway.
Right, you don't need to differentiate
within
between...
the context of those cultures and those...
Yeah, it's like daughters would be illegitimate already because they were female.
They're not going to inherit in most feudal...
Okay, no, that makes sense.
Pseudo... I don't know, whatever you call that sort of system.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
But I think it'd be interesting because, just to see if that had any impact to the use in Game of Thrones being that sort of more traditional usage, as opposed to just an annoying bastard, an irritating person, or a bad person in general. The other use, of course, is something that is like something else but inferior in quality or ruined in some way. So if something has been bastardized,
yeah, sure,
it's been wrecked either through addition, subtraction, or mutation somehow. But I was interested to look up the word because I saw it in the index of Smith's synonyms discriminated, and I went, oh, that'll do. Back to our meticulous planning. This was approximately 45 minutes before we recorded this episode. So, real big and thinking ahead, this guy. Next up, procrastination. So this is an interesting word. It's one of those words that I do kind of like to find in that it is a compound that I had never thought of as being a compound before. So there is a suffix in bastard that I did not ever think existed, and it is the ARD suffix. And so the bast is the root and the ard is the suffix. And this suffix is seen in words like coward, drunkard, buzzard.
Awesome.
You'll like this one. Wizard.
Oh, nice.
And braggart. And that obviously has that consonant, the D to T consonant change. But the ard suffix, Edom Online defines it as being, quote, an agent noun suffix denoting one that carries on some action or possesses some quality, usually with derogatory connotation. So
So a
thing that
wizard
does a
is
thing.
one who whizzes.
Yeah, or a wise one who
A
has
thing that does a thing.
A drunkard is one who has drunk and is drunk, and a coward is one who cowers, and all that other stuff. So that's where the ARD suffix
And a bastard is one who basts.
Yeah. OED says that the ARD comes from it's a French and then a German before that, meaning hardy, and it's often used in family names and surnames, and you think like, I don't know, Gerhardt or Reinhardt.
Howard.
That heart in that.
Okay, sure.
Meaning hardy, which seems to be like, I don't know how to take that as far as the transition into it usually being pejorative, because it doesn't feel like, I feel like surnames would not adopt and maintain a pejorative sense as part of the family name. And then again, it does mean hardy, which is generally a good,
I disagree.
positive thing.
I disagree entirely.
Okay.
What I always think about in terms of surnames that are pejorative, and am I right in saying that Batard is a French, exists as a French surname?
I'm
I
not
feel like
sure.
there's a rugby player. But what I always think about in terms of surnames that could be, whether or not they are these days seen as pejorative, is that sense of, like, when you were a little kid, was there ever a kid in your class at school who wet their pants in front of everybody?
Yeah.
And did that story endure?
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah. Okay.
when you become a teacher, and children like to fuck with you, because they do, one of the sort of stalwarts of fucking with the teacher is, I need to go to the toilet. You have to let me go to the toilet because I need to go to the toilet, otherwise I'm going to pee on the floor. And when a kid is clearly fucking with you, in that sense, my sort of not very kind, but entirely, well, I felt it was appropriate in the situation, because if you're going to fuck with me, I'm going to fuck with you. I used to say, okay, pee on the floor. You will forever be the kid who peed on the floor. No one will ever let you forget about that.
Right. Yeah.
So, if that's how extreme this situation is, and you're not prepared to ask me nicely, then that's how that's going to go. So I feel like, given what we know about words becoming mean, and people generally being pretty mean,
Yeah, that's true.
that I'm trying to think of an example. There are some sort of wonderful medieval kind of almost the sense of that sort of slightly insulting, culturally unaware way that Native American names are kind of that sort of pastiche of the mother. The first thing that the mother sees when she looks out of the tent becomes the name of the baby.
Right.
And you have all these ridiculous sort of sitting duck or whatever. But I feel like, he who fell off the mountaintop has the possibility of becoming a surname.
Yeah,
Not
okay.
because it confers any great honour. In fact, quite the opposite. Because no one, there's nothing that people like more than somebody else being the butt of the joke.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess I was thinking more the longevity of the surnames. Like, if you had a family that was saddled with some sort of pejorative family name, that it sort of tends to get weeded out eventually. Like,
I don't know. I mean,
I think of John.
Have you ever had a
Cleese.
nickname that you tried to get rid of? Nobody ever lets you forget that stuff.
Well, yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess generationally.
Anyway, sorry.
Like with John
continue.
Cleese, with his family, his father changed their family name from Cheese to Cleese.
Really,
because,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that's why the pronunciation isn't actually John Cleese. It's Cleese, which is how I remember that, because it was once Cheese, and so
that's very cool. So,
yeah,
so
I'm just
hence
thinking
Monsieur Fromage.
Yeah, so it's sort of like
Because
feel like
whenever John Cleese signs into a hotel guest book, he signs himself in as Herr Käse or Monsieur Fromage or Senor Queso.
And that's
nice.
From the fact that was his family name. Anyway, so but also the original German meaning being hardy, which is generally a positive attribute.
Yeah, sure.
Is something that that also makes me kind of go, okay, well, maybe that's changed a little bit. But again, like you say, in the tradition of things getting gradually meaner in English and being used more and more pejoratively, then that sort of makes sense as well. The bast part of bastard is where a lot of ambiguity and of unknown origin stuff comes in. There was for a long time, and this is where what Smith cites, so in his time in the late 1800s, it was still very much the going theory, is that the bast comes from part of an old French phrase called fille de bast, or fille de bas, F-I-L-S, so literally son of bast, or translated into born of bast or born in bast. And he says, Smith goes on to say, quote, "The word has been connected to the modern bas, B-A, accent circonflexe, T, a pack saddle, as if a bastard was one born among the pack saddles of muleteers." The OED picks up on this as well in their entry for just that bast sort of standalone noun, saying that under this theory, there was a link between bast and an Italian word bastare, meaning to carry. And so that, what the OED says about that, quote, "The semantic connection being explained as an allusion to casual sexual intercourse between muleteers and serving girls at inns." And so that was where that theory came from, is the pack saddle and the pack saddles of travelers or muleteers at inns and the various liaisons that happened there, blah, 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 and the offspring thereof. However, the OED goes on to spoil all of that fun rompingness by saying this has basically all been discounted now. The modern scholarship more or less universally rejects this theory, says that the two basts, the fille de bast and the one meaning pack saddles, are basically unrelated homonyms. They just happen to sound alike.
Boo.
They don't actually, I know, right? Ruining everything.
Sometimes scholarship really spoils good stories.
It just really does. Facts get in the way of awesome tales. The OED says that the most plausible theory for the origin of bast in bastard is related to an old Frisian word or an old Saxon cognate of that word. And I don't know how to pronounce this because I don't know how to do the vowels in Old Frisian or anything else in Old Frisian, to be fair. But it's B, and then it's an O with the straight line accent over it. I don't even know what that's called. It's like an umlaut that's been ironed, or a tilde that's been ironed. I'm just going to call it the steam-pressed tilde. And so
Sorry. It's like an umlaut that's been ironed.
Yeah. You know the one I mean, though, right? It's been smushed down, so it's just a line.
I know absolutely the one that you mean. That's fantastic.
I can't tell if I want to go with
do continue.
a steam-ironed tilde or a uni umlaut. But either way, a unilaut.
An overgrown umlaut.
Yeah. So anyway, B, O with an umlaut that's been ironed, S-T. That's the old Frisian word. Bost, boost, whatever it is. I don't know. Or possibly an old Saxon cognate of that word, which means morganatic marriage, which I also had to look up.
What?
So a morganatic marriage is a marriage between people of significantly unequal social standing. So if you have a nobility marrying a commoner is basically where this comes in. And there are rules for rules, quote unquote, rules that are made up by people who care about these sort of things, which unfortunately is also the people who make up all the rules for society usually. So
yeah, how is it that goes?
And so a morganatic marriage is a marriage specifically enumerated so that the power and title and rights, etc., do not flow from the husband, who is presumably in this case the one with all the power and rights, transferring to the wife and children of that marriage. So if an aristocrat or specifically or particularly royalty marries a commoner, defining that as a morganatic marriage, I guess, it's either defining it as a morganatic marriage prevents those rights and titles from passing, or the fact that they enter into this union with the knowledge that these rights and titles are not leaving the husband and going to the wife and the kids is what makes that a morganatic marriage. I'm not sure which direction that goes. Somebody knows
This is
that.
so interesting. I've never heard of this before.
Yeah.
I've given myself a little Google because multitasking.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. It's kind of like an inbuilt prenup.
Yeah, sort of an automatic safeguard of the purity of royal blood or some such nonsense. The picture that is all over the place, fairly or unfairly, is Charles and Camilla. I don't know or care enough about British royalty to know whether that's applicable or whether that's a slight or what that is, but that's the picture
what
that
I'm
Wikipedia
interested
has
in
anyway.
is that Wikipedia does not mention it in their entry for morganatic marriage. They instead have Edward VIII and Wallace Simpson.
Yeah, that's the one that I was thinking of. But he abdicated, right? And so he gave up. So I'm not sure that would be, because it feels like from the definitions that I can find that a morganatic marriage is one where the man in power gets to keep his stuff. It just doesn't transfer to the wife or children of that marriage, which I guess means that it just ends. The line ends with him unless they split or she dies and they get a new wife. Or I'm not sure how that works. I don't know.
I wonder what the I was. Read all the words, Amy. I was about to say, I wonder what the etymology of that term is. So when you go to Wikipedia, probably one of the most accessed encyclopedia information sites on the entire internet, the very, very first section on morganatic marriage, past the introduction, is etymology. So I'm just going to shut up and read some words and listen to what you're saying, and then I might actually learn something rather than trying to know everything all the time.
Automatically
On you go.
As a start, yeah. So, now I didn't read that far into the article either, so I'm going to rely on you telling us the etymology of morganatic marriage, because I was just interested in that dynamic and that just the constant ability and infuriating ability of people in power to just make up rules as they go so that they get to control where power goes.
Yeah.
Which is always really irritating.
What Wikipedia has to say about it. It states that it's usually generally a marriage between a man of high birth and a woman of lesser status.
Right.
And neither the bride nor any children of the marriage have a claim on the bridegroom's succession rights, titles, precedence, or entailed property. The children are considered legitimate for all other purposes, and the prohibition against bigamy applies. In some countries, a woman could also marry a man of lower rank morganatically. Wonderful. But the etymology is derived from the medieval Latin morganaticus, from the late Latin phrase matrimonium ad morganaticam, and refers to the gift given by the groom to the bride on the morning after the wedding, the morning gift or dower. And this Latin term is applied to a Germanic custom and was adopted from the Old High German term Morgangeba, or Morgengabe, corresponding to early English Morgengefu. So Morgen presumably as in morning, as in Guten Morgen. The literal meaning is explained in a 16th century passage quoted by Ducang as a marriage by which the wife and the children that may be born are entitled to no share in the husband's possessions beyond the morning gift. So the dowry, the gift,
right, it was in lieu of access
to the bride,
to those powers.
That's your thing, and everything else is my thing.
Oh, what a fantastic present!
Awesomes.
Surprise! Good morning, honey.
I learned this week in the museum in Girona of the Jewish Museum, which was one of these museums that doesn't have a great deal inside it, but lots of information based on not very many actual artifacts. But I learned that according to sort of medieval Jewish custom, because part of Jewish sort of family custom is to go forth and multiply, to have children and raise them. If you, as a Jewish man, marry a woman who dies without producing any children, then you get your dowry back from her family. Yeah, indeed. Your daughter's dead. Now give us her money back. We didn't get any kids.
Jeez. So, yeah. So just to wrap up, that sort of morganatic marriage thing as a route for the bast and bastards, that it just sort of seems to make sense to me, given both ideas of the word bastard or to bastardize something, like the idea that if what you're looking out for is the maintenance of a royal or otherwise socially important lineage, despite the fact that the morganatic thing, the prohibition against bigamy and otherwise legitimacy of the children notwithstanding, there is a sense where that is an illegitimate marriage for the purposes, if your main goal is to carry on the family line, then that is an illegitimate. Those are illegitimate children for the purposes of that. But also the idea of something being bastardized is like the idea of that family tree has been made worse through that addition because that branch no longer continues to branch, so to speak. Like
I suppose you could also look at it from the sense that it's as the sort of women and children of lesser status, quote unquote.
Yeah.
It's not that wonderful for you either.
Yeah.
I mean, what it's just occurring to me now is it does sort of stand as evidence of the fact that despite, you could look at a term like this and say, oh, well, clearly marriage has been a very businesslike and loveless affair since the beginning of time because of these stupid rules made by the people in power about who gets to have the power.
Right.
But it also stands as evidence of marriage for love, because presumably someone who isn't going to inherit any of the titles and their sort of bloodline, their inheritance, their rights, but still chooses to marry that person, presumably they have a good reason for doing that, and it seems reasonable to assume that the most likely reason would be that they actually love that person.
That's fantastic. Thank you for bringing that around. I was getting all cynical about this, but that's very nice. I like that as an endpoint better.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's, seeing as how I learned about the existence of the term approximately 5 minutes ago, maybe it's a little bit off for me to interpret it as such. But I think that, it does seem to imply that marriages happened for other than just purely fiscal reasons.
Yeah, it's not just a transaction.
Yeah.
In this case. That's good. I like that. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with that. That's the ending of the story of Bastard, is that
wow.
Amy is a delightfully hopeful person and we need more of her in our lives.
I love it. I'm very fond of the word bastard because of its vowels.
Yeah.
And immediately when you started talking about the word, I thought I don't say that word the way you say that word.
No.
And
you say
in
it
fact,
better.
I don't say that word the way that a lot of people say the word, but I very much enjoy it because vowels are where accents live, really, most of the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it's a very, very obvious one, and I think because of that, it's one of my favourite swear words because it sounds so very, very characteristically Scottish.
Mm-hmm.
And you bastard. I learned it as a bad word before I knew what it meant in terms of legitimacy. I hate that term, legitimacy. That's it's problematic at best. Like you say, out of wedlock is a nicer term to use. And I also, as soon as you brought it up, I also thought of Game of Thrones, not just because the Battle of the Bastards was such a wonderful episode,
sure was,
but also because of the way that George R.R. Martin chose to deal with the issue of marriages out of wedlock with the names. So
yes.
Snow in the north.
Those were awesome.
And I forget. I'm sure in the book when they go to the Vale, there's a female character. And I think her name is something Stone.
Yeah. And Sand was one of them for one of the regions.
Yes, that's right, well. Alara Sand. So down in the south it was sand, and then up in the north it was snow, and then in the middle in the sort of mountains it was stone. And I quite liked that sense. I don't know if it comes from, as so much of Game of Thrones does, it's a lot of it's cribbed from history. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way to George R.R. Martin, of course not. But I did wonder if there's a precedent for that in a culture or another language.
It'd be interesting to find that out.
Yeah, and if not, then it's a very beautiful it's a very beautiful kind of. It makes what is essentially a very cold, unfriendly, and capitalist, if you like, term seem a little more natural and easy and kinder. born of the stone, born of the snow.
Mm-hmm.
That sense that, well, you may not be inheriting a title anytime soon, but actually you're born of the earth. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the crazy hippie in me that likes that explanation better.
I don't think so.
Wow.
I think that's pretty popular. Yeah, so that's
So-
so there you have it.
A person who does a thing, plus morganatic marriage, plus the wonderful adventure of something to do with people who carry things on mules, which was then
Pack saddles and stuff.
debunked.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the way back to...
What a journey.
Yeah, be a bastard.
And that's it for another episode of Lexitecture. To get in touch with us about something you heard this episode, you can email us at words@lexitecture.com. You can also follow along and talk to us at Lexitecture on Facebook and Twitter, and at Lexitecture Podcast on Instagram. For back episodes and the occasional blog post, visit us at lexitecture.com. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.